grinds my gears.
What the hell is wrong with you?
What the hell is wrong with you? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have finally made it. NFL Draft Week. Within the next 3+ days, the Minnesota Vikings will make one of the more important decisions in recent memory for the organization as they look to bring in the future of the franchise as far as quarterback position goes. Ton of rumors, ton of smoke and contradicting stories and all kinds of stuff going on this week. Depending upon who you listen to, who you read, and what time you read it, there is anything from the Vikings are set to move up to pick 3 to the New England Patriots are in no way, shape, or form ever going to trade away the 3rd pick, to the Vikings are going to move to the 4th pick and trade with Arizona, to Arizona said get bent because we're taking Marvin Harrison Jr., to blah, 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 blah. The Giants are taking a quarterback. The Denver Broncos are moving up and taking a quarterback. The Raiders are taking a quarterback. One of the guys I conversed with quite a bit on Twitter X today brought up a very good point. The New York Jets could be interested in a quarterback. So it is extremely, extremely interesting. But yeah, Riley, let's start with this because this could potentially be a massive, massive bombshell if what Paul Allen talked about today has any merit whatsoever. Paul Allen on his show today, when talking about this whole, of course, the tampering issue with the Atlanta Falcons tampering with one Kirk Cousins at the combine prior to the legal tampering period and all that kind of stuff. Of course, you've been seeing all the rumors go all over the place on Twitter X and Facebook and whatever social media platform you have to be on about, would the Atlanta Falcons be forced to swap picks with the Minnesota Vikings as a penance, I guess you could say, or penalty for that tampering? Originally, that the first talk was, hey, will they swap picks 8 and pick 11, which giving the Vikings 8 and 23 would be a nice, I guess, bonus for the Vikings. But Paul Allen today on his show said, not looking at 8 and 11, he is talking 8 and 23. So, I guess, to what Riley says here about any credence to what Paul Allen says, Paul Allen normally doesn't say much of it stuff unless he has gotten some kind of indication from somebody within the organization. Paul Allen being the voice of the Minnesota Vikings, the mouthpiece, basically, if the team gives Paul Allen a tip or, some kind of anonymous source type stuff, it's usually because they want it out there. So, and they know PA will get it out there. Say what you will about Paul Allen. I love him as a play-by-play guy, not such a big fan of his show, but if Paul Allen on his show today is saying that there is a potential for the Falcons to be forced to swap pick 8 with pick 23, then at least it's being talked about within the walls of Twin Cities Orthopedic and Performance Center. And if it's being talked about in Egan, then it's probably being talked about as a potential within the NFL and the competition committee or whoever's the one that oversees, I guess, the handing out of the penalty for this. Now, in my personal opinion, and yes, it's biased because I would love to see it, but if they want to nip this illegal tampering crap in the butt, then forcing a team to drop down, that far and swap picks would be a hell of a deterrent for the next team that comes along to, potentially do this illegal tampering stuff. But so let's consider this first and foremost. If the Vikings just playing the scenario here, do I think it's going to happen? I don't know. I think there's probably a slim chance that does happen. But exactly. So Riley here, another one here. Pick swap 8 and 11 seems infinitely more likely. I would agree with that, Riley. NFL is going to take action. There is a precedence for pick swaps. They've forced it before, or a loss of draft picks. So I guess let's start with this. Scenario 1, if the Atlanta Falcons forfeit their first round pick, that makes the Vikings pick 11 and pick 23, essentially makes them pick 10 and 22, which makes the picks more valuable and potentially less they have to give up to move up. However, if Paul Allen's comment has any credence and the Vikings would be awarded pick 8 in exchange for pick 23, to Doc's point here, with pick 8 and pick 11, you should not have to give up your 2025 first-round pick to move up to 3 or 4. You may have to give a mid-round pick or something of an extra flavor along with it, but a team like New England, who has a ton of holes, and you offer them pick 8 and pick 11, that is going to be a very attractive package for them. They need wide receiver help. They need line help. They need defensive help. They need all kinds of stuff that at pick 8 or pick 11, you're going to have your choice of the best defensive players on the board because nobody's taken a defender before pick 8, I don't think. I think there's a very good chance there isn't any defensive players go at all in the first top 10. But not having to give up our 2025 first round pick to move up to 3 or 4 would be huge. So that's something that definitely bears watching over the next couple of days here. I would assume that the ruling on that would come down before Chicago goes on the clock Thursday night. And if that is the case, 2 first absolutely would totally change things, Doc. I agree 1,000% on that one. So good evening, Stephen. So the Vikings obviously are sitting here. Not only do they have their contingency plans for current pick 11, current pick 23, and what they want to do, they are also sitting there right now, crunching the numbers, figuring out, okay, if we have pick 8 and pick 23, what's it going to cost us to move up? If we have pick 8 and pick 11, what's it going to cost us to move up? So we know they're working all these scenarios. They've got everything. Quasi's a numbers guy. He's probably had these scenarios mapped out ever since the whole tampering deal first came to light, right after her cousin signed with Atlanta. Fort Matty Man, good evening. But anyway, so that stuff all bears watching. It's purely speculatory right now. We don't know. We know that Atlanta is going to be penalized, and Adam Schefter and some of the other bigwigs have said that Atlanta is going to get hit hard on this. What getting hit hard means is still up for interpretation, and we hopefully will see that within the next 2 or 3 days before Chicago goes on the clock Thursday night. Riley, when did the league announce the pick swap with Arizona and Philly last year? It was the day of the draft. It was that morning. So I could see a similar situation where Thursday morning the league comes out and says, we have credible evidence of the Atlanta Falcons illegally tampering with Kirk Cousins, which in turn prohibited the Minnesota Vikings from being able to make a reasonable shot at keeping him because Kirk already knew what he was going to be getting from Atlanta. And with that, Atlanta has been penalized X, whether it's a loss of the pick, whether it's a forced pick swap with the Vikings, it remains to be seen. But I would expect something Wednesday or Thursday morning to come out, and because they would want this done prior to this year's draft, I believe. Same thing happened with Miami a couple of years ago, when they were illegally tampering with Sean Payton and Tom Brady. They lost a first-round pick a couple of days before. In a pick swap from 8:23 the morning of would throw a massive monkey wrench in the draft. It would for some teams. Like I said, I fully believe that Kwesi and KOC and their draft group in the war room are currently planning for all of these scenarios. Like I said, Kwesi's a numbers guy. He's going to look at every situation, every scenario, and every possible outcome. So I don't think it's going to hurt the Vikings any. As far as picking, I think it's only going to help because they're going to have this year. It comes out 10 o'clock Thursday morning. Hey, Atlanta has to give Minnesota the 8th pick in exchange for pick 23. Kwesi's going to be on the phone with Elliott Wolf or whoever the GM there is in New England, and hey, we got 8 and 11 now. What's our new deal going to be? And the negotiations will go up until the time that New England or Arizona or whoever goes on the clock. But with that, we'll leave that as it is. And, of course, if something happens to that effect, we will jump in on it and talk about it at that point in time. Let's look at Doc, your worst case, it doesn't really affect us. Best case, we get a late 8 and 11 in the first. It's going to be interesting. Absolutely. That's best way to put it right now, Doc. And we're going to leave it at that for right now, and we'll see what happens. But with that, let's go and Diana Rossini thinks Kwesi's seat is real hot. He'd be desperate to knock this out of the park. Thoughts? I do not believe that Kwesi's seat is hot at the moment. The Wilfs, as we've known, are very patient owners. They have always said, and they've made no secrets, they want to model the organization after stable franchises like the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have only had 3 head coaches in my lifetime. And so I don't think they're going to be quick to pull the trigger on Kwesi. Now, if somehow or another we fail completely to get a quarterback in this draft, and Sam Darnold falls flat on his face, I think then there may be some sort of a warming of the seat, shall we say. But if they do what they want, what they're planning to do and what they want to do, and go get that rookie quarterback that they believe in and they want, that I think buys Kwesi and KOC more time, because it's going to, a rookie quarterback's going to need time to develop. So that buys them. I would say my guess is if they draft one of these top 3-4 guys, that you probably would see a 2-year extension given to both Kwesi and KOC. After 3 years, you're going to know what you got. You're going to know whether or not they did the right thing or not. Gone soft on Penix. Yeah, Penix and Bo Nix both are consolation prizes. I think I would go. They're not the priority. They are not the target. They are one of the two. I've heard, differing reports that they like Penix better than I've heard. They're worried about Penix because, he's a lefty and they have to switch things around. And then you have Darisaw, who on the left side is no longer as valuable as he is with a right-handed quarterback. And there's that kind of stuff. But anyway, so let's look at scenarios here. So of course, there was this whole kerfuffle late last week and early into, over the weekend of Jaden Daniels' camp being extremely upset with the Washington Commanders because instead of having a one-on-one personal workout private meeting with Daniels last week, they brought in Jaden Daniels, Michael Penix, J.J. McCarthy, and I don't know if it was Drake May or Bo Nix, one of the two, all four at the same time. And Daniels' camp didn't really appreciate that all that much. His agent went out on Twitter and liked and reposted a couple of tweets criticizing the Commanders for doing it, which I fully believe was an absolutely stupid move. I don't know why you would do that. Good evening, Reggie. Penix wrote a nice letter to the league. I like the dude, but Teddy and Bradford, two freshmen mind or a franchise guy that he kind of knee history. I haven't had a chance to read that, Reggie. I saw that posted on Twitter X today, but I got busy at work and I didn't get a chance to read it. But I'm going to go back and try to read it here this evening. But anyway, let's look at the first scenario. The big noise is that the Commanders are in on Jaden Daniels. He's probably going to be the second overall pick, which would push Drake May and J.J. McCarthy to 3, 4, or beyond. Then you look at the second main rumor, and I've seen this a lot, that the New England Patriots, they love Jaden Daniels, but they're not sold on Drake May. So if Washington takes Jaden Daniels, that opens up a trade, and the New England Patriots being more willing to trade out of spot 3, with the Vikings being the most likely trade partner to move up there. Daniels odds up to minus 400 for 2 right now. I still think he's a second overall pick because they said earlier yesterday, I think it might have been this morning, that Daniels camp and Washington have talked and have calmed the waters, I guess you could say, about that whole deal last week that they went with. I don't know. I think, and it makes a lot of sense with Cliff Kingsbury being the offensive coordinator in Washington now. Jaden Daniels makes all the sense in the world going there. I think at one point in time they would have liked to have made a swap with Chicago and gotten Caleb Williams there. I don't believe that's happening now. I think the Bears are going to stick and pick and take Caleb Williams. But I do believe Jaden Daniels is the pick at number 2, which would in turn open up pick 3 to be traded. And I think the Vikings are going to do what they need to do. I think the only option not on the table is trading Justin Jefferson. And we'll talk about Jefferson here in just a little bit. But I think trading picks. Brunswick and I were talking about this earlier today, about the talk that there's going to take at least 3 number 1 picks plus some other stuff to get from 11 up to 3. I think Kwesi and KOC are good with that, because if you hit on that right guy, and they made this comment, both of them have made it, so it's kind of interesting on a side note, listening to these guys, both Kwesi and KOC, talking to the media. They have their marching orders or their talking points at the very least, and they're on the same page because they're always talking about the same stuff, same catchphrases, same keywords, things like that. But, they're not going to be scared to go give up what they need to do as far as first-round picks, whatever, to go and get that guy that they want, because if they hit on that guy, nobody is going to care what you gave up to go get Drake May, for instance, if he turns into the next Patrick Mahomes. Now, he's a different style quarterback than Patrick Mahomes. I'm just using this as an example. I'm not comparing Drake May to Patrick Mahomes. But if you get somebody in there, lot of comps with Drake May as a Matt Stafford kind of guy. Guy can put up big numbers, and KOC won a Super Bowl in Los Angeles with Matt Stafford as his quarterback. It's that kind of thing that if they hit on this guy and Drake May or JJ McCarthy, whichever one, comes in and is your franchise quarterback for the next 10 to 15 years, gets you to the playoffs year after year, makes a Super Bowl run, and God willing, it wins us that first Lombardi trophy, then Kwesi and KOC have a leash as long as you want. Because if they are the two guys that deliver a Super Bowl trophy to this franchise who has been so starved for it, been so close so many times over the years, and falling flat when it comes to that point. If they can do that, their legacy is cemented. If they miss, or if they fail to get a guy, and they spent a bunch of draft picks on a guy that doesn't pan out, then it's not their problem anyway, because it's going to be the next regime that is going to have to come up with the next quarterback and whatnot. I mean, look at the Los Angeles Rams as an example. This year is the first time since 2016 that they have a first-round draft pick, because they gave up a crap ton moving stuff around, buying players, going in, all in, and they won a Super Bowl with it. Kwesi would be, at least he has his final decision. Yes, 2 point. I don't know if you guys saw the interview with Kevin O'Connell. He was at some sort of a luncheon type thing. I forget what it was for, Faith in Football or something like that, earlier this week, or end of last week, sorry. And rookie quarterback is set up to fail. Too many holes. Yep. Washington's not drafting two North Carolina quarterbacks back to back. I don't think so either. But anyway, that Kevin O'Connell, at that luncheon thing, and they were interviewing him, and they asked about this, and he, of course, using some of the same catchphrases, and he let a couple of interesting things come out. He was, first off, he joked that he's gotten the reputation or the nickname of the quarterback killer in Egan, meaning there has been quarterbacks that whether it's the scouting department, whether it's Kwesi, whether it's whoever, have wanted to draft, that KOC has put the kibosh to, because this guy doesn't fit what I want. Looking at last year, when we saw the Vikings pick Jordan Addison, you saw Kevin O'Connell going, stick to the plan, stick to the plan. I think that probably was one of those instances. I think Kwesi had it in his mind to possibly take Will Levis last year, but Kwesi said no. I mean, KOC said no. I want Addison. Levis doesn't fit what I want. So, I mean, there's instances like that, I think. So Kwesi does it. Buck eventually stops with him regardless. But I think Kevin O'Connell has a lot more input and a lot more say than than maybe some people think. He also made a comment that he may or may, when they talked about New England, and Kevin O'Connell made a joke. He said, I may or may not have sent Robert Kraft a very beautiful bouquet of flowers earlier this week. Kind of a, hey, do the Vikings have a wink nod handshake deal in place with New England? I think that it does. I think they do, with the contingency, like I mentioned earlier, about the whole Jaden Daniels thing. I think if Jaden Daniels is off the board, the Vikings have a deal in place to trade with New England, and they're going up to get Drake May. Now, if Drake May goes to Washington, which, again, to Disgusting Acts comment here a minute ago about Washington not drafting two North Carolina quarterbacks back to back. If You know, if they take May, just scenario wise, then Daniels gets picked at 3 by the Patriots. Then the Vikings, I believe, also have a handshake deal in place with the Arizona Cardinals, saying, okay, we're going to move to 4, we're taking JJ McCarthy. Or if Arizona is saying, no, we're not moving. Although Monty Austinfort loves to wheel and deal, so I don't see that. And he has said they're open to trading, whether they are or not. But I would say they have a deal in place with Arizona, and it wouldn't surprise me that they have a deal in place with the Chargers as well. Riley, absolutely cannot agree with this more. I'd rather take a swing and miss and risk actually being bad for a few years than sit around in purgatory like we have been. And, Kwesi has made that comment in his last official press conference last week prior to the draft. Just because something is aggressive doesn't mean it has to be scary. Hope is not a strategy. Things like, these things that they've all been saying is you cannot be scared to go take a swing at something because, and a lot of us have said this for a long time. You guys have said it. Lance and I have said it on the shows. If you are too scared to take a risk to be great, you are never, or to be good, you're never going to end up being great because you're going to be too scared. You're going to be sitting there in that safe zone where Minnesota has been for at least the last 6 years, longer than that, that, we can't go take a aggressive swing on a quarterback like that. Rick Spielman never had the confidence to take an aggressive swing on a quarterback like that because Rick Spielman knew in his heart of hearts that he had no idea how to evaluate quarterback play. And that eventually got him fired. But yeah, sit around purgatory like we have been. The 49ers showed it's not the end of the world. Yeah, they gave up 3 number 1 picks for Trey Lance, and Trey Lance was on the team for 2 years, and he's now a backup in Dallas. And San Francisco went to the NFC Championship in 2022, went to the Super Bowl in 2023. So yes, missing on a quarterback is not the death blow that's going to turn this franchise into the Cleveland Browns of the 90s and early 2000s or the Detroit Lions of the past 60 years up until at least Dan Campbell got here. Spielman and Zimmer destroyed our future. I wouldn't say they destroyed it, but they definitely pushed it out further because at the end, we all know that. And, and this is the thing. I see so many people who, for whatever reason, just hate Kwesi. Yeah, they always look back at, the Lewis Cine pick or the 2022 draft. You got to remember about the 2022 draft is that entire scouting department and most of the guys in on that were all Rick Spielman people. Kwesi came in. He didn't have time to get his own guys to be out there scouting stuff and getting the stuff that they knew that Kwesi wanted and what Kwesi liked and what Kevin O'Connell liked. They're going off of what Rick Spielman had liked for the last 16 years. You look at 2023, the draft was better because Kwesi, the guys that they kept around, they knew what the team was looking for with this new regime. The new guys they brought in were of the like mindset of what Kwesi and KOC wanted. And there was results. This year, I think is going to be even more. The Vikings did the thing going around to the quarterback pro days. They would send Josh McCown and Scouter to the actual pro day itself. But then when you go to the private workouts, everything else, they brought everybody. They brought Kwesi. They brought KOC. They brought. Well, they couldn't bring Wes Phillips because he's been suspended for 3 weeks, which, of course, he comes off suspension here coincidentally within the next couple of days. So we'll be available draft night. Good evening, Dan. Donatello versus Flores. Yep, that's another part of it. Flores did a masterful job with what he had last year. And there's a ton of turnover on the defense again this year. We're still, I believe, lacking in the defensive front. We need some better talent up there. But the draft is a position where we can get some of this. And 2025, we're turning around and we're looking at a potential of right now we sit over $100 million in cap space next year, which is going to allow us to be able to go after some big value free agents and things like that. To Brett's comment here a minute ago, it's taken Kwesi 2 years at least to get out from underneath that mess that Spielman and Zimmer left us. But there's no mistaking anymore. This is now Kwesi and KOC's team, and the two are tied together, equal length contracts. Riley, this is exactly what I was trying to say here a little bit ago. Vikings have the infrastructure to survive a miss at quarterback like the Niners did, not counting on a quarterback to save the franchise like the Patriots, like the Commanders, like a lot of these guys, where rookie quarterbacks so often fail because they go to a situation like the Commanders, a situation like New England, where you don't have weapons, you don't have the infrastructure around them to set them up to succeed, and you throw them to the wolves before they're ready. They struggle, they fail, and they never recover. This is why, hey Nick, good evening. This is why we've seen so many comments and stories about not only pundits but rumors coming out from a lot of these quarterbacks camps and things like that the most favorable spot that any of these guys could find themselves in would be to be drafted by the Minnesota Vikings because of what they have here. They have Kevin O'Connell, who is, a quarterback whisperer, the, offensive guru. You have all of the weaponry around. You have, not for the first month, but by October, TJ Hawkinson should be back. You've got Jordan Addison. You've got Justin Jefferson. We brought in Aaron Jones, so our running game should be more up to par with what it had been in years past this year. We got a completely revamped defense. Flores has a second year in the system, getting his guys in there. So it is a ideal situation, I believe, for any of these guys to come in. And they all are intrigued about wanting to come here. But that being said, I fully believe, as far as, we talk about who's it going to be for the Vikings. If the Vikings can get to pick 3, like many have rumored that they're going to, or, have that wink nod handshake deal in place, assuming Caleb Williams goes 1, Jaden Daniels goes 2, the Vikings trade with New England, the 2 firsts this year and, a first next year, maybe something else. Their first target is going to be Drake May. And I think the Vikings are going to do everything they possibly can to make Drake May a Viking by the end of 8 o'clock on Thursday night, whatever it ends up being. But if, for instance, Drake May goes second to the Commanders, Jaden Daniels goes third to the New England Patriots, then whether it's 4 or whether it's 5, the Minnesota Vikings trade up, and J.J. McCarthy is option number 2. And here again, these guys have talked. Well, Kevin O'Connell said this a couple weeks ago. You cannot just pigeonhole yourself into just loving one of these guys. You have to do your due diligence, and you have to find out, can I make my offense work with Drake May? I think the answer there is a resounding yes. Can I make my offense work with J.J. McCarthy? I think that answer is also a very strong yes. Can I make my offense work with Jaden Daniels if for some reason he's the one that falls? I think there's more of a question mark with Jaden Daniels just because of the style he plays. He's a much better version of Josh Dobbs, I think, as far as the running ability, and he's a much better thrower. He's more accurate. He's all of that. Is that the kind of quarterback Kevin O'Connell wants? I don't think that's his first choice. I think they like him well enough that if he is the one that's there, they will take him. But he's option number 3 at the very much. Then after that, you fall down to, again, the Michael Penix and Bo Nix level. I mean, I've made no secrets about my feelings on Bo Nix. I don't think he is a fit for this offense at all. Just, I don't believe in Oregon's offense. I believe it's a gimmick offense set up to hide the deficiencies of the quarterback. I believe when Bo Nix gets into the NFL, you're going to see more of the Bo Nix you saw at Auburn than the Bo Nix you saw at Oregon. My opinion, but Daniel says Teddy, but faster. I don't necessarily agree with that. Reggie, he's a much better thrower, throws a better deep ball than Teddy did. Teddy didn't have much of an arm. Jay Daniels got a pretty good arm. Reggie, you think it's going to be very interesting? It happens now between now and Thursday. None of us know what the plan is, but the excitement is an all-time level. Will we trade up or has the plan to stay? The plan is not to stay put at 11. That is not. There's a contingency plan where they have to stay put at 11, but their plan is not to stay put at 11. They are not going to risk their future. They wouldn't have traded up to get 23 a month and a half before the draft if their primary plan was to stick and pick at 11. Now, there are possibilities that, a quarterback could fall and they could end up having to be, only having to trade back to 6 or 7, 8, something like that. If sorry, Reg, reading names here back and forth, but Riley here this last week, first time I really believe it's possible Drake May could end up a Viking. I think it's 50% chance it's JJ, 45 May, and 5% other. I think, it's probably about 50-50, I think, on which one of the two they get. I'm not quite sure. Texans offered, we didn't call them. Yeah, but the reason why we decided to make that trade is because we had a plan to move up regardless once Kirk Cousins signed with Atlanta. And I think they would have drafted a quarterback even if Kirk had stayed for another year or two. Because Kevin O'Connell also made the comment, or it might have been Kwesi, I forget which one, but I think it was actually Kwesi, that they have had their eye on this draft class since they came to Minnesota. So they knew 2 years ago that this was going to be the draft class where they had their opportunity to go and get their guy that they're going to hitch their wagon to. And, when Houston made that call to move up, that whole scenario was we now have 2 number 1 picks to use this year as ammunition because, as we all know, the number 1 picks this year are worth more than a number 1 pick next year or 2026 because you know what you're getting. You don't know what you're getting next year with the Minnesota Vikings first overall pick. It could be a top 5 pick. It could be picking 27th. And that's the scenario where it makes a future draft, first round draft pick a little bit less valuable than the current years. But with the wish the tampering stuff will get settled tomorrow. I do too, but I don't think it will. Very interested in how we have the quarterbacks ranked. I have a pretty good idea, or at least my theory on this. Caleb Williams is off the board. We know Chicago's taking him. I believe the Vikings have Drake May as their target. I think Drake May has been their target all along. J.J. McCarthy is their number 2. Then there's 3 and 4 is interesting because watching some of the interviews and stuff with these guys over the last month, KOC and Kwesi, at one point I got an impression that they didn't really care for Michael Penix all that much. Then in another interview, I got a different vibe that they like him. Then you hear stuff, that the left-handed thing and switching the offense around is differently. It kind of slides him down. And you didn't hear a thing about Bo Nix until they went to his pro day. Then, it was said late last week that it was either Ben Gessling or one of the guys, Minnesota beat writers, that said all 6 of the top 6 quarterbacks are in play for the Vikings, which, could lead it to any of them. There's a chance JJ falls. None of us know the plan. I think we trade up. My thought, and I've seen this one a couple of times too, that, we can stick and pick. If McCarthy makes it out of the top 4, we can stick and pick him at 11. I don't think that's the case. And I wouldn't be willing to, if I was Kwesi or Kevin O'Connell, that I would be willing to take that risk, because the closer he would get to you, the easier it's going to be for a team like Denver, who, of course, traded for Zach Wilson today, but still have no answer quarterback. They have Jared Stidham, they have Zach Wilson, and they have one other guy. I can't think of who it is right now. They would be able to jump ahead of the Vikings and get him. The Vegas Raiders would be the same thing, jumping up to get him. And Chicago at 9, I would think, would be more than willing to trade with one of those 2 teams, just to, if nothing else, make sure the Vikings didn't get that quarterback that they were sitting there waiting for. And we all know, as Vikings fans, we've all been Vikings fans for a long time, that if we banked on sitting and picking and waiting for that quarterback, whether it's McCarthy or whoever, to fall to us, it's not going to happen, because somebody's going to take him ahead of us and we're going to be left holding the bag. So I think even if McCarthy starts a mini slide, I don't think the Vikings can afford to wait past 6 or 7 at the worst. Chicago would absolutely screw us at 9. I think they would too, Riley, just because you do what you can to, hinder a division rival. Now, unless, somebody like Odunze or Malik Neighbors happens to fall, or somebody like that, Joe Alt is there, that they absolutely love, I think they would be willing to trade back a couple spots. JJ has that Joe Burrow swagger that intrigues me. I like that too about him. That's one of the things, he's got those intangibles. Chicago's in a Maserati Marv. They think they're going to try to trade up. Yeah, that's an interesting point. I know I've heard there's a possibility of that. I always thought at the beginning, when they still had Justin Fields, that they were going to take Marvin Harrison Jr. at 1. But, Doc, we have to pick by 5, I feel. I think that's probably where the end of the safe zone begins. I don't think the Giants are taking a quarterback. I think the Giant quarterback smokescreen, and I read a guy he's a Vikings fan, but lives in New York, in the Giants media market, talking on Twitter today about that whole quarterback smokescreen. And he said everything he's hearing there, that's all complete bullshit, because they just paid Daniel Jones. B, they have no wide receivers. They have, no weapons, no targets. So I think that the Giants quarterback smokescreen has been to get a team like the Vikings to jump up to 3, 4, or 5, preferably 4 or 5, and take a quarterback there, which means, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to go either 4 to Arizona or 5 to the Chargers. But if the top 5 are the 4 quarterbacks and Marvin Harrison Jr., then the Giants sitting at 6 have their choice. Malik Neighbors most likely would be the guy there. So that's the deal, I believe, with Giants. Now, the Jets, yes, I could see them potentially looking at a quarterback at 9. I don't think Aaron Rodgers would appreciate that too much, and I think he's got that team by the short hairs, so I think they're going to do what he wants in order to keep him happy for this year at least. So I don't know how big of a threat they are, but, Denver and the Raiders are absolutely a threat. But anyway, we've talked 45 minutes about the quarterbacks. We'll talk more about that upcoming here before the draft yet. But let's get on to the Justin Jefferson situation. There has been credible steam from multiple sources that a Justin Jefferson contract extension has already been done or it is imminent in being done. Of course, you saw over the weekend, Justin Jefferson was in Minneapolis at the Minnesota Timberwolves Phoenix Suns playoff game. Now, that right away brings up some things. Why is Justin Jefferson in Minnesota in the offseason at this point in time? He's not there practicing because he wasn't there for the organized team activities or whatever, optional, whatever it was last week. So if he's in Minnesota, that leads me to believe that something's going on contractually, that he's there to negotiate or he's there to sign papers. There was also a meet and greet before the game, I believe it was, or something like that, that Jefferson was at, and he was asked by a fan, a younger fan, if he's going to sign an extension and stay with the Vikings, and he told the kid, "I sure hope so." And I kind of gave that Justin Jefferson smile when he said it. My personal theory on all this, I think the Justin Jefferson contract extension gets announced on Friday because as it sits right now, the Vikings do not have a day 2 pick, second round, third round. So what better big news for the Vikings to put out on Friday after, on Thursday night, drafting the quarterback of the future, whether it's Drake May, whether it's J.J. McCarthy, whether it's potentially Jaden Daniels, I suppose. You sign that quarterback on Thursday night. You bring him in to Egan on Friday for the official, team unveiling and all that other stuff. And then, oh, by the way, the Minnesota Vikings have signed wide receiver Justin Jefferson to a 5-year, $120 million contract, or whatever it ends up being, $115 million. I think it's going to be somewhere in that $35 million a year average annual value. But I think that would be exactly, Sarah, that good evening, by the way. That's exactly what the point I was trying to put across. There would be no better way to do that day off, basically, from the draft than to introduce your new quarterback to the fan base and have his number one wide receiver sitting there now locked in 5 more years. If I was a betting man, which I am not because I absolutely suck at gambling, that would be my spicy hot take on what's going to happen. Jefferson is going to be signed, whether they announce it on Friday, which I think would be, like I said, I think that would be the perfect time to do it. But if it isn't announced, then it's going to be announced shortly after the draft, because they're going to get this done. They're going to get rid of the distractions. They're going to get Justin Jefferson happy. They're going to get him a shiny new quarterback, and he's going to come in and he's going to do his presser. The media is already all there to meet with the quarterback, so you do it all at once. You steal the spotlight from the rest of the NFL because you finally shut up all those stupid Justin Jefferson trade rumors, and you basically put the rest of the league on notice and say the Minnesota Vikings are here, we're coming, and you're going to have to deal with us for quite some time. So I think that's what happens there. I have every confidence in the world Justin Jefferson is going to be here, and he's going to be here for the foreseeable future. Justin Jefferson getting traded to the Argonauts. Yeah. I heard that one too, Jared. JA, and Brandon Powell will do off-season workouts together. I mean, very possible, and I think whoever the quarterback is, whether it's J.J. McCarthy, whether it is Drake May, I think they are going to be in here as soon as they are able to do it. They're going to have the playbook right away. They're going to be starting to dig into this stuff. And they're going to make a push to be the starting quarterback at the beginning of the year. Now, I don't think that that's going to happen. I do believe Sam Darnold starts the season. Just because Kevin O'Connell's offense is that complex. It's not just the illusion of complexity. It is actually a complex offense. So to expect one of these guys to be up and ready to go week one, I think is a bit much. Now, if they can, then you got yourself the right guy. If he's able to come in, show what he's got during training camp, and get named the starter week one. Footwork being fixable is absolutely a tell. Yeah, that is it, Riley. That's one of the issues with Drake May is his footwork and his lower body movements need some work. But that is fixable. It absolutely is. Most of the time you can't fix accuracy to a point. Now, if the poor accuracy is a result of bad footwork, then yes, that can be done. I mean, it happened with Josh Allen. But there's a lot of those comments, right? Like I mentioned about the joke he made about sending Robert Kraft flowers the other day and stuff like that. I think there are so many tells out there that say the Vikings. The one caveat being the Jaden Daniels situation. But I fully expect when the New England Patriots go on the clock Thursday night, there to be an announcement shortly thereafter saying that there is a trade. The Minnesota Vikings have made a trade with the New England Patriots, and the Vikings are now on the clock, and Drake May is our quarterback. Quintez Stinger is going to be a Viking. Anybody would have footwork problems with that trash line and that's the thing. Drake May was as good as he was with having a poor offensive line and really no big name targets to speak of. Last year he had his numbers wise, he looked better last year. Of course, he had Josh Downs as his number one wide receiver last year. But George with the old airplane comment there, sniffing glue, drinking tequila, whichever one that works. But I would advise against sniffing glue, drinking tequila. Tequila and I have a rough history, so I'll leave that as it is to you guys. But I tell you what, though, if the Vikings do what we all expect them to, and they come out and they get one of those two guys, my choices, like I said, Drake May, J.J. McCarthy, my one, my two. I'm going to be happy as hell with either one of those guys. Jaden Daniels, I'm going to be fine with. If it's anybody other than that, I'm going to be disappointed, I'll be honest. We'll support them until they prove otherwise, just because I'm a Vikings fan first and foremost. But I truly believe they are going to do whatever they can do to get one of those two guys. Do not mortgage your future on improvement. We talked about this earlier, Dennis. Good evening, by the way. If they hit on this guy, it doesn't matter what you gave up to get him. And you can't play scared and just, the guy I love and the guy that I know in my heart of hearts I can go win a Super Bowl with is sitting there for the taking. But I don't want to give up that much, so I'm just going to settle and take quarterback 5, quarterback 6, who, maybe is going to be a Kirk Cousins at best that gets you to the wild card round every couple of years and nothing else. I don't want that. I know there's a lot of people that are in that mindset, and I can respect that thought process. But for me, I can't do that. But we've done that for the last 20 plus years anyway. The last time we even took a swing on a really first quarterback was Dante Culpepper. We got him at pick 11. But And Culpepper had his flaws and everything else too. I think had he not exploded his knee against Carolina, I think there would have been more to Dante Culpepper. But, be that as it may, the Vikings have never drafted a quarterback in the top 10 in their entire history, which is now at 63 years. So what we've had before hasn't worked. Let's try something different. And if we throw 3 number 1 picks at Drake May and he bombs out and is a failure, what's the worst that's happened of it? 3 more years if we didn't win a Super Bowl. We haven't won a Super Bowl in 63 years. 3 more years, fine. At least you tried. I would rather fail miserably by trying than sitting and wallowing in mediocrity because we were too scared to try. Sarah, I've been saying this for, ever since we got to this point where we knew we were probably taking a quarterback. So many of those first round quarterbacks, these young kids who are taken in the top 5, top 6, top 10, whatever, fail because they go to a terrible situation and they are expected to take that team, put them on their shoulders and pull them out of the depths of hell when they have nothing around them. The Vikings have the ideal situation for a young quarterback. We have weapons. We need a little work on the offensive line. Not going to lie there. We have a very aggressive and improved defense. We have all this stuff that's going to, and right now we have a bridge quarterback sitting there that is not going to force this guy to have to start right away if he's not ready. We're putting whichever quarterback it is in the best position possible to succeed. So if they don't succeed here, they weren't going to succeed anywhere. Nympha, good evening. Great if we had a line built on both sides of the ball like the 49ers, built from the inside out. I understand that thought process, Dennis, and I fully think, I agree. I'm of the agreement we need to beef up that defensive line, and I think with the remaining draft picks that we have this year, a lot is going to be paid to that defensive line. A 3-4 defense base is built around a big, burly, nasty nose tackle. There are guys in this draft that fit that bill, whether T'Vondre Sweat falls because of his DUI issues now a little bit where we can get him at pick 108, whether it's a guy like the kid out of Texas A&M, McKinley, I can't think of his last name right now, whether it's Christian Boyd out of Northern Iowa. There's guys out there that fit that bill. And then along with that, there's other guys, Fisk from Florida and other places that, kind of fit more the 5-tech defensive end kind of set. So there are plenty of options out there in the mid rounds. I think there's going to be a lot of talent in those mid rounds where we can make improvements on there. Flores will set Sweat straight. I think so too. And McKinley Jackson, thanks, Dan. The thing with Sweat, yeah, he made an absolutely bonehead move a couple of weeks before the draft, and that shouldn't happen. And he's going to have to answer for that. The one thing that I will credit Sweat with is that the other car that was involved in that accident that he was involved in, the guy got out and ran, took off. To Sweat's credit, he stayed there and he took responsibility for it. Didn't run from the cops, didn't whatever. He was there. And yeah, he's going to have to answer for that. And it's going to hurt his draft stock. There's going to be teams that have taken him off their board because of what he did. The kid cost himself several $100,000 and not a couple $1 million. But, it's a thing that, people make dumb mistakes. He didn't go beat the crap out of his girlfriend, or he didn't driving under the influence is a bad idea. It's a dumb move. We've all made stupid mistakes like that in the past. Sweat drops to 108, better sprint the podium. Yep, that's exactly. I don't know about the other one. no one's perfect. Have to have grace. People can change. Absolutely, Sarah. And that's going to be a question with Sweat that he's going to have to answer. And I'm sure he's been answering that for the last 2 weeks. Anybody who is interested has called him, has talked to him, to get his side of the story, have you learned from this? What were you thinking? Why did you do this kind of stuff? So, and it all depends on how he's handled that. And from stuff I've heard, he's handled it as good as can be. Sometimes it's a blessing in disguise. People have something bad like that happen to them. It causes them to fall down a draft board or whatever else. But it puts a chip on their shoulder and they're determined to right the wrong. And after that, be a better person for it. Dennis, I think Sam Darnold may surprise some people. I do too. I think, and I made this comment today on Twitter, and I got laughed at for it that, people are talking about we can't give up the first next year for 2025 because it's probably going to be a top 5 pick. This team is not going to be picking in the top 5 next year. I think with the weaponry and everything around here, I think even Sam Darnold can push us for a wild card spot. I honestly do. But, whether that's the case. And so my personal thought is that 2025 first round pick is going to be somewhere between 15 and 25. We'll see what happens, but that's my personal opinion. You can screenshot it, you can write it down, and if I'm wrong next year, you can throw it back in my face and I'll accept it. But that's my opinion on this. But worry about Sweat with the drive and work ethic by taking him available at 108 and still take Boyd later. I guess I've liked Sweat. That I've watched him a fair amount this year. I've liked interviews, things like that. Vikings have picked the top 10 times since 1970. Yeah, I don't remember what it is, but it's a very low number. The Vikings are always, and that's been our problem with trying to find a quarterback for the last 40 years. We're always too good to be picking in the top 5 and not good enough to be winning the Super Bowl. So, and I believe the Vikings will be in that range again next year. And for the, people are saying, well, let's just stick and take the 2 best defensive guys this year and we'll look at a quarterback next year because we're probably going to be picking high. Next year's quarterback class is nowhere near as good as this one. I mean, you've got Shadur Sanders and you've got Quinn Ewers and you've got a couple other guys that, might be up there. But again, the goal, and KOC and Kwesi have said this, they've been watching the 2024 quarterback class ever since they got here. This is their chance, their opportunity to put their stamp on the team, to get their guy. And again, if you wait until next year, KOC and Kwesi are in year 4 of a 4-year contract. I don't believe that they want to go into the final year of a contract without having their guy as in a quarterback. They get their guy this year. I think a contract extension is in the works. They'll get a 2-year extension just to kind of see how things go and go from there. I think Skull Mafia, good evening, by the way. I know he was a fairly solid second before that. It could cause him to fall to 3. Stranger things have happened. I don't believe he's there at 108 when we pick again. Would love it if he is, but I think he's going to end up probably going in the early to mid 3rd somewhere. He may still end up in the 2nd round if the teams have done their homework on this situation. They're satisfied with what they find out. It might not hurt him. Yes, Sarah. Thank you. Yes. That's been the recurring theme of Vikings fans. It's, next year's going to be better. Let's wait till next year because now is not right. Always next year. It's always next year. Eventually, next year never comes because you get old and you die, and the Vikings have not won a Super Bowl yet. No, if you want it, if there's a guy you believe in, you do it. Do what you need to do. Damn the consequences. Ride or die with this kid. If you're right, you become Vikings royalty for life. and they put Kevin O'Connell on a pedestal up next to Bud Grant if he gets us to a Super Bowl and wins us a Super Bowl. If they fail, they just become the next people in the long line of people that have tried and not made it here, and we move on to the next to try again. Again, if it was, I believe so too, Sarah. But it's I don't know how. I guess I kind of lost my thought process on what I was trying to say there, but it's back to the, if it's too expensive to move up. Well, if we try and fail, I can't blame them for trying. I know somebody asked, made a comparison of trading 3 number ones plus up to number 3 to get May or whoever, likened to the Herschel Walker deal back in the 80s. Tommy Kramer commented on that post and made a very strong comment that the big difference there was nobody on the Vikings coaching staff or the players, none of them wanted that trade made to go get Herschel Walker. It's well known that Jerry Burns didn't want him, and the offensive coordinators didn't want him. Schnelker and company. Tommy Kramer said they didn't feel it was necessary, and they didn't want to do it. It was Mike Lynn that got bamboozled by Jerry Jones and Jimmy Johnson that ended up costing the whole situation. The difference here is that you have Kevin O'Connell and you have Kwesi Adolfo-Mensa working together. And if they agree that they're both good with giving up 3 number 1 picks plus whatever to go up to pick 3 and get Drake May, or trading up to number 4, 2 number 1 picks and change to get JJ McCarthy, they are doing it because they want to do it, not because it's being forced on them by somebody up above who couldn't care less what the coaching staff wanted or what the team needed. They're doing it because they think it's the best move for the team. And that's all you can ask for. That's why you put a curse on the Cowboys that they will never win another Super Bowl. Now, Ken, I again respectfully disagree with you on that. I don't care what we have to give up. The only thing that is not negotiable is Justin Jefferson. He's not part of a trade package. You got to give up 3 number 1s to go up and get a quarterback. Do it. And if you believe in that guy, I'll put that with a caveat. If you believe that the guy that you are giving up that draft capital to go get can be your franchise quarterback for the next 10 to 15 years, can be that guy that wins you a Super Bowl, then you do what you need to do. You move heaven and earth. You move mountains. You do whatever to go get this guy and make him the cornerstone of your franchise. Yes, Doc, we need to try. Do or do not, there is no try. If you're too scared to, because you may fail, you're never going to reach that pinnacle. We are going to be the same team we have been for the last 50 years. We are going to be a 10-7, 11-6, 9-8 team that gets in the wild card round, wins maybe 1 playoff game, and then gets their ass handed. We haven't won a playoff game since more than 1 playoff game in a season since 1987. That's got to change. Yeah, I don't want to give it up, Dan, but I will give it up if it means we get our quarterback. Screw the draft picks. I'm going to go right out there and say screw the draft picks. Go get your guy. And that's all I'm going to say about it, because I am so tired of this Minnesota passive aggressiveness that this team has had for so goddamn long. We need to do what it takes to go get the guy that you believe in. If they fail, it's time for a new scouting department. If they fail, it's time for a new scouting department. If they fail, it's going to be a new general manager and probably a new head coach making the next decision on who the next try at quarterback in the future is going to be. Exactly, Doc. And I've seen this, there's a lot of people that I've seen over the last multiple years saying that, God, if the Vikings could only have a franchise guy like a Patrick Mahomes, like a Joe Burrow, like a Josh Allen, like a Tom Brady, like a this, that, and everything else. One of those guys, a Joe Montana, a Peyton Manning, you pick your legendary quarterback. If the Vikings could only get one of those guys, we could win a Super Bowl. Now we have the opportunity to go try and find that guy. It's like, well, it's too much to give up. I don't know that I want to go do that. Because what if we suck afterwards? Are we going to be like the Rams who don't have a first-round pick for 4 years? I don't think so either. We gave up a first-round pick to get Sam Bradford. Yeah, we did, and that was another panic move because Teddy Bridgewater's knee exploded, a week before the season started. But Kwesi's not going to make a move that I don't think he believes is a good move because he's a numbers guy. Seems to me, he can take that emotion out of it, and that's what you need. I know you're gonna fall in love with some of these guys, and those are but you can't talk yourself into something just because you like a kid. But you have to have that conviction to believe in it and be willing to stake your job on it, which is what Kwesi and KOC are doing here. They are going to stake their job on the fact that the quarterback that they pick on Thursday night is going to be the guy that can get it done, who can win a Super Bowl, who can win multiple playoff games, who can have us as a competitor year in and year out. And that's the thing, disgusting act right there. That's that defeatist attitude that I'm talking about here that just drives me absolutely insane because for once we are at a point where we can do what we've all wanted for decades. And when we were there, it's like, well, no, I don't know. I can't. That's a lot to give up. I don't know. No, screw it all. Screw the draft picks. Go get your quarterback because we're not going to be in this position, ideally, again anytime soon. And even if we are, it's not going to be as good of a quarterback class as it is right now. So worried about draft picks because we never won anything. If we've never won anything, so then who cares about the draft picks? Rick Spielman had a draft where he had 3 first-round draft picks, and the best one out of the batch was Cordero Patterson. He drafted how many first-round cornerbacks that bombed out within 2 years? Jeff Gladney, rest in peace. Mike Hughes, guys like that just wasted picks because they couldn't identify a guy. If we waste 3 more of them, I don't care. We're not any further behind because we still won't have won a Super Bowl. But if we're right, we enter an era of Minnesota Vikings football that we have not seen since the days of Fran Tarkenton, that most of us probably have never seen. Again, Ken, if he's a bust and they give up that much, Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi are probably both out of jobs, and then it's time for the next guy. We're no further behind if he busts out because we have yet. It's not like we're going off of a legacy. We don't have Patrick Mahomes, and we're going to trade for, get rid of Patrick Mahomes and get some young guy after we've just won 3 or 4 Super Bowls. We need to try something different. If that means giving up 3 number 1 picks to go get a quarterback, I'm there for it. I'm all in on it, and let's freaking do it. Only thing we have to say, if fear is fear itself, exactly. So, but anyway, guys, we gone about an hour, 15 minutes here. My voice is starting to give out on me. So I think we're going to wrap it up for tonight. However, we have a very, very big announcement for you guys. Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Central Time, we are going to have a live pre-draft super show. Not only will you have Brunswick and myself, we are going to have from Vikings Report with Drew and Ted, the great Ted Glover, the great Drew Bunting. And from Vikings First and Skol, we are going to have the great Tyler Fornes, along with our own Smokehouse King, Reggie Adams Jr. We're going to have a six-pack panel with the final words on the NFL draft, all the latest from the Vikings news. Do we have a resolution to the tampering thing? Do we have any news on a possible Vikings trade? All of that stuff. Julian, I believe you are right. But so Wednesday night, make sure you tune in, 7 p.m. Central Time. Brunswick, Ryno, Drew, Ted, Forno, and Reggie the Smokehouse King. All six of us. We're talking that. We may even look at a mock draft. We're talking about that too yet. So make sure you tune in for that. Again, it'll be on Facebook, on YouTube, all that stuff. Hit that like and subscribe button on the way out. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. Follow our YouTube channel. Helps us out a ton. Love doing this stuff, guys. We've had back and forth for what seems like an eternity. It's here. The draft is here on Thursday. We're here Wednesday night. Shout out to all you guys in the chat again, as you always are. Thank you so much. I love the interaction. I love the comments. I love the passion. As you see, you can get me going on some of this stuff because I feel passionately about this, and I know you guys do as well. Shout out to the Filipino fan club halfway around the world. Noi, Nympha, Sam, all you guys over there watching, thank you as always. And again, Wednesday night, super show, pre-draft spectacular. Join us, like and subscribe. Tell your friends, tell your friends, tell your mom, tell your dog, tell everybody to come watch. It's going to be a great show. We're going to have a ton of fun. Always have a great time when those guys are on the show because they're great guys. The wealth of football knowledge that'll be on this show may be too big for the screen, but we're going to give it a shot anyway. So with that, guys, you guys have a great rest of your Monday. We will see you Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Skol Vikes, a new era is upon us. Let's get this done and let's roll. Have a good night, guys.